hello, here we are. Just get this so that I can see what you're saying. And we will be off and running for our last live video. Now I say last live video because it's not the last video. I am going to do that photo editing video that was meant to be live earlier today. But the technology did not work out. So yeah, moving on. Okay, so here is the layout that I did in that impromptu session today. I am going to do one more layout, this time without a sketch, but from one of the page kits that you saw me put together. And this time I'm going to pull something from that chapter kit from the Winnie the Pooh stuff, the 100 Acre Wood, and I'm going to do one of those layouts. Then, as I'm working on that, this is your last opportunity for question and answer. So any scrapbooking questions that you want to know, throw them out there today so that I can catch them while I'm working on that. It does not need to be on the layout that is going, it doesn't need to be specific to the layout that I'm going to build. You can choose whatever you would like to talk about as long as it's scrapbooky or somehow related. I will answer. Hello, Mary and Helen and some other people who just popped in. Lovely to see you here. So let's get that chapter kit, which I have put in an immensely safe place, which is where? Good question. No, it is this one. Okay. I was looking at a B-side through the other side and it was confusing me, making me think it was not something. So here we go. A little refresher of what is in here. Lots of things. I'm going to move a couple bits from this line back to where they go. Including the dies, so I don't lose them. Okay. Punches can go back on the shelf too, and that makes my workspace pretty workable. Huzzah! Now, all these things in here. Now, we might wonder, what do I do with all that stuff when my desk is not that big? So here is the answer. And if you've done clear the desk, you've seen this a little bit. So this is a basket for me to put all this stuff in. And this is just something to keep everything standing up. That's all it is. It could be a piece of cardboard, absolutely anything. But this makes it easy to see what I have. It also makes it pretty easy to get everything back in to this bag when I'm done working on the layout. Because obviously this is a kit for lots and lots of pages. I'm not going to make it through all of these supplies tonight and be ready to pack them away. So this is handy. Just keeps it all in a finite amount of space, and it does not take over my desk and my floor and all of the other spaces. But this is quite a big kit, so there's a lot to go in there. I actually have a slightly bigger version of this that I used when I was scrapping away with some friends a couple weeks ago, but I couldn't fit it in my luggage to bring it back on the train that day. But I really like the size, so the next time I see the friend who took it home, then I will have a size that I like better. Do I always do a layout? Here's a question. Oops, the screen doesn't want me to see. Okay. Jenna says, do you always do a layout or a big chunk of a layout in one go? Any tips for scrapping when you don't manage to get bigger chunks of time to scrap? Yes, and that's exactly what I've tried to show you here. So I might do photo editing in one session. I might, like, just not all of my photos for an entire summer or anything, but just a set of photos. I might page kit in one session, either for one layout, 2 layouts, a few layouts, or a table full of layouts. And then I might make the layout in pieces. So for example, that layout that I just showed you was made over 2 videos, and because I didn't have a chance to scrapbook in between those, I still need to put the journaling on and finish that stitching right there. So I do lots of things like that in little bits. The only time that I scrapbook all in one go is when I'm doing Facebook Live. If you see me do layouts on YouTube, they have been stopped and started many times and just edited together. Class videos are the same. Like, for those of you, if you are new to this, I have had a few people ask me some questions about, is this the style of my classes normally? No, this is very different. And those of you who have done both kinds can now, I'm sure, say that I'm correct in saying that. The reason this is called behind the scenes is it is much more rough around the edges, much more the stuff that I would edit out. And so when you see edited videos from me in classes and on YouTube, they have been done over lots of little sections, and it does make it a little bit less fluent, sometimes like a little less efficient, because when I stop and I start, I kind of lose the flow. But that is just life. And so I edit out the 5 minutes where I have to kind of remember where I am. Sometimes I have to, if I think, oh, was I in the middle of like explaining a point when I had to stop and go away, then I have to go back and review the video, which at least you don't have to do that if you're not filming. Yeah. Okay, so I have my photos here and my list. So my suggestion would just be to take everything in little chunks and to have a place where you can leave a layout out, even if it's not your workspace. If you can have your page kit and you can have a shelf somewhere where you can put the layout up high. Now, I do leave things on my desk, but if I can't do that because my desk has been taken over by something else, I then put the layout somewhere else, like on the top of my paper shelf, or just on a shelf somewhere where it's protected, even though it's half finished. I'm sorry, Jessalyn, that you've got to go sort out your kitchen building, but enjoy the fancy new kitchen. It'll be worth it. Okay, so I have my list here of how these photos are broken down into different pages. I've got the Heffalump Jungle, I've got Pooh Sticks Bridge, got Pooh being dragged along. I've got, this is the enchanted spot. I've got the bench as a little starter. And I've got running down the hill. True. I am loving this. Okay. This is one portrait and one landscape, so I know how it's going to go on the page. I'm going to go start with that. And I'm going to pull some papers. Now remember, I didn't make any individual plans for pages. I just pulled a bunch of different things that I thought would work well together to form a chapter about the 100-acre wood. So now I need to choose what will go with this particular layout. Hello, Sophia, and a few others who, oh no, Sophia, you are on the forum and missing here. Well, you haven't missed much. So today I am just going to be scrapping, but this is your last kind of chance in this class to ask questions, so ask anything you want. Alex has got to go for the school run. Off you go then. I like this one. Okay. When I pulled this out, I wasn't sure if I would use it all in one go or spread that wood grain out, but I just think it's going to be beautiful as a big piece, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to put some of this yellow stripe on it. And what have we got here? Maybe that one. This one, just in layers. I'm not going to use the whole 6x6. But I don't have any red in there yet, so I would like some red. And that's this one. Now, are those identical except for the color, or are they slightly different? They're slightly different. Are they? Yeah. This says Eeyore. That has Eeyore. Why am I not seeing tea? Oh no, they're identical. I wasn't seeing the teapots. Okay, so maybe I'll just use it in red and gray and not in white. Okay. What I'm going to do is get all of those boop, 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 to where I can see them. This gray is talking to me, so I'm going to pull that out as well. And then everything here is just going to go behind me while I'm working on this, so that it's not far and I can grab it if I need to. And let's unexplode the trimmer from the earlier layout. And off we go. So, this is going to be the background. Which is one of those papers that kind of makes kit clubs annoy. Because if this were a paper in a collection where I could have bought more of it, I would have bought a whole pack. But it was from Studio Calico, so I could only get a piece. Now, I'm not particularly needing the pink because the colors here are yellow, red, and navy. So I'm going to swap it for yellow. And looks like I need 4 stripes. Is that right? It didn't look right on my 5 stripes. That's why it didn't look right. Apparently I can't count. It's late. Thursdays are a long day in this house. Plus we've just been over to measure everything in the new house. Okay. Where is the real 100-acre wood? Okay, so the real 100-acre wood is actually called the 500-acre wood. It is in a place called Ashdown Forest in Sussex. And it is where A.A. Milne lived when he left London, and where Christopher Robin played. So you can go, and there are lots of walks you can do. There are lots of walks you can do in Ashdown Forest, but there are 2 specific walks that you can do that are Winnie the Pooh hikes. And they take you through all the different places mentioned in the books, and the things that are mentioned in the books are also mentioned in the picture books and the films if you're at the stage of doing kind of adapted version, which we have now read the first of the proper books, which we finished right before we went. That's why we went. We finished it right before the film Christopher Robin came out, and then we went to the 100-acre wood, and then we went to see Christopher Robin about a week later. I'm going to put this in a big grid. I'm just trying to decide which way I want that to go. And Wonder Boy and I drove there because I don't normally drive, but it was one place that was a nightmare to get to on a train. I think I like that direction better. And so we rented a car, and it was just a little over an hour to get there that way. So that worked out well. And had a grand old time. So we took a picnic, and we ate our picnic, and we took Pooh Bear, obviously. And this entire day, he stayed in character of his own choice. This was not something I told him to do. He just came up with this. But anybody who asked him his name, he said, Christopher Robin. Which is really funny because he's still in that stage where the letter R sounds a bit like the letter W, so it was kind of Christopher Robin. Very sweet. So, yeah. We went to the Heffalump Trap. We went to Pooh's Enchanted Spot. These photos are the place, if you know these stories, I'm sorry if you don't, and this is like random rubbish to you. These photos are the place where when Kanga and Roo are new to the 100-Acre Wood, there's a moment in the books where the other animals are not kind to Kanga and Roo. And this is the woods where that happens. And then Roo's sandy pit is around the corner. Eeyore's gloomy place is remarkably gloomy. We went there on a really sunny, beautiful day, and it's just really gloomy. So yeah, it was very interesting to see how it all translates. Okay, somebody asked, who was that, so I can say your name instead of just calling you somebody. Jen says, do you think you'll end up with an upgrade album for the Disney part of your summer? It was 3 days, so I'm not going to do an upgrade album for 3 days. I will be doing an upgrade album for that trip, which included 3 days at Disneyland and a week in Kansas City with my family and 2 days in Boston. Yeah, so that will get an upgrade album. Okay, let's have a little strip of this to bring the red in. And I had 2 creatures. Yes, Piglet's Bath. That's exactly the chapter, because, because Kanga gets it. She knows what they've tried to do, so she gives Piglet a bath, which he does not like, but he can't complain because he's pretending to be Roo, who they have kidnapped. It is not their finest moment. Okay. Liking this composition, feeling this needs yellow up here, so I'm going to go to my various paper pieces that I've got in here and add a little yellow. I'm going to add a strip of this. Oh, and you know what else I'm going to add? Look at that branding strip there. That's what I need. That's better than the flow. So just wanted a little bit. Mary's having cat issues. Cat is disturbing her live viewing. Jen says, do you think you'll separate those different places into chapters then in your upgrade album? Well, they will naturally fall into chapters because it will be chronological. Does that make sense? So, yes, there will be some chapters. The reason that I won't say that, like, I'm not doing a Disneyland kit like this as a chapter, because with 3 days we wore 3 outfits and, you know, like 3 themed things, because come on, this is me. So I had a spreadsheet and we wore coordinated clothing. Oh, losing Tigger in the woods is horrible. Yeah, that's pretty mean. So I won't do a big chapter, partly because the clothing each day will probably contribute to the individual page kits, but also the backgrounds, because from land to land, Disneyland is, you know, very different colors and things. So instead of doing one big kit like this, I will do individual kits, but there'll be some carryover. And then when you're reading the album, it will naturally fall into chapters of Destination 1, Destination 2, Destination 3. And then it's back to the chronological album because we'll be home. Yep, but I will do an upgrade album for the half-term trip because that won't be in these summer memories. That's definitely autumn, but that was our October trip to Florida. Is Walt Disney Wednesday returning? Yes, but I cannot do it while I'm doing this. But what you've seen here is all preparation for all of those things to come back. So you've seen kits that you will see on Glitter Girl. You have seen kits that you will see on Walt Disney Wednesday. You have seen stuff that you will see on Facebook Live. Yeah. If there were any certain kits that you were expecting to see that you wanted to see the kit processing for and you didn't, let me know, because I can try to include that as you know, an after the fact kind of addition wherever possible. That red is not in the right direction. Oh! Piglet's upside down, Eeyore's on his side, Pooh is looking up. Well, how is that going to work? I think it means I have to include quite a big piece so that you can see Pooh. That's the answer. Anything else here? Okay, a Harry Potter chapter kit, please. Okay. And I'll see what I can do to share that with you. I'm just going to walk to one other table because I left my tea and I can hear my voice going. So I'm just going to do that before it gets really gravelly and you can't bear to listen to me. This is the other thing that gets edited out of other videos, is when my voice starts to go extra gravelly. No. Okay, I will see what I can do. The Harry Potter kit video will not be this week because the only filming time I have left is tomorrow's Facebook Live, and I've still got to do that Lightroom video. But I will add it to the forum as soon as I can. Probably next. I should be able to do it at the beginning of next week. Okay. Right. Well, thank you. It is still the way I do all of the pages, that I have one photo here, one photo there. But it works. It's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. That's definitely what this is. What brand of repositionable adhesive do I use? I use Kokiu. This is exactly the same as the one that I normally use, except the other one is just packed away because I went to demonstrate last night at the WI. And this is a little mini one where the dots are heart-shaped, but the glue itself is exactly the same. I just had this one still on my desk, and I had taken all my other rollers with me last night, and I haven't refilled them. Okay. Let's have this. Fit right on that line? I think it can. There we go, and let's have a title. I want this to be about how he's talking to Pooh. So what kind of title will work with that? First of all, I'm going to look at these phrase stickers. Use this adventure. I know that I overuse the word adventure in my albums, and I really do not mind. I love it as a word. I love the word adventure. It's something we say a lot, and it's fine. Where did I get the Winnie the Pooh goodies? Are you ready for this? Poundland. WI is the Women's Institute, yes. I have no idea how similar they are here to the Kiwi counterpart, but I would assume pretty similar. So let's see what can go with that. The WI doesn't operate in cities in New Zealand. It's just a countryside thing. We definitely have it in the city. Do your chapters usually get a title page or not? Yep, they usually get something that serves as a divider. In this case, it's going to be I have 2 photos that I chose from this trip for to be printed at A4, so they're going to be the first and last pages in this section. I'm just doing 100 Acre Adventure. Okay. Yes, Poundland is very much like Dollar Tree and anything like that, where they can be awesome or they can be rubbish. We had the weird thing until recently that we had 2 within 50 meters of each other, both Poundland. Like, there were various other pound shops, but there were 2 Poundlands, one inside the shopping center and one right outside the shopping center on the high street, but literally around the corner from each other. And they always had different stuff. It's very strange. But recently they closed the one outside, so that is no more. But anyway, yes, they have a little craft section in ours, and you find really random things. The other day they did a whole section of lavender things. So I bought lavender doilies and lavender pearls, lavender brads. Oh, Mary also had 2 Poundlands and they closed one. Maybe it was a business model. Maybe it was to drive out other pound shops. They did a series on a documentary series here not recently, but not all that long ago, about the whole economy of pound shops, and it was strange. I feel like I need our here, our 100 Acre. Oh, or your, because it's about them. Your 100 Acre Adventure. Let's do that. Is there equivalent to Tuesday morning here? We don't have Tuesday morning, but we do have TK Maxx, which is hilariously the same thing as TJ Maxx, but I believe they couldn't call it TJ Maxx because somebody must have already had the name trademarked or something. But anyway, so for whatever reason, when you can't use your name, you change it a little bit. They changed it from TJ to TK. It's hilarious. TK Maxx, and they get a lot of closeout scrapbooking things, but they can be in one store, might get scrapbooking all the time, and the next one will never get it. So you have to scour. But they're not quite like Tuesday morning. My impression is that Tuesday morning gets things like people said they found like kits of Glitter Girl, where it'd have like one of all the different embellishments and a paper pack or something that you normally wouldn't be able to buy it like that. Okay, look for a journaling card to put up here. So I've got some different options here. That one I don't feel like will work. This one. I think that's my best option. And I could make it go this way to get a bit more space. Oh yeah, I had some others here, but that might be the best. I need white, not cream. Oh, I could use this one. Maybe one of those two. Let's have a look. White at the top. Yeah, I like the white. Okay. My Tuesday morning didn't kit anything for Glitter Girl. but they did have lots of different things. Okay, maybe that was just a weird shop where somebody had told me about their Tuesday morning with all the kits. Maybe that was the exception rather than the rule. Fair enough. Let's put some gray on this. Journaling can go up there then. Okay, I've got this little bit of red sparkly embellishment. What else do I want to add? So I'm looking through the different embellishments that I pulled out to go with this chapter, of course. Now, I didn't pull out a lot of things like sticker books or anything. I'm not sure. I don't think those are going to look nice because they're definitely cream on the layout where everything else is white. So that can stay for later. I pulled this out because I think this will be lovely for the pictures of Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh. That might go on one of the, either the first or the last pages. I know there was just a question there about archival safety. It's not off topic, don't worry. How concerned are you to use only archivally safe products on your pages? So everything I've used so far is possibly archivally safe. So this is not labeled as archivally safe. This one sticker here. Everything else I've used is. What do these actually say on the package? Have I got one handy? Anyway, the answer is that I use mostly things that are labeled as archivally safe, and I keep my pages in an archivally safe place. No, it does not tell me on here if they're acid free, and I haven't tested them with a pH pen or anything like that. But my philosophy is that I do a lot to help. It's not going to be perfect, but it is a lot better than it would be. Does that make sense? So I'm putting in a page protector, I'm keeping in an album. Most of the stuff I use I know is acid free. There might be a few bits that are not. I don't use anything that I know is yellowing in front of my eyes or anything like that. I pulled out a load of flair that was rusty, and I really should go through all of my albums and pull out all of the flair that rusted, because that was a problem with an embellishment that I used a lot. The other thing that makes me not worry about it so much is that all the photos are digital and I have everything backed up. Oh, and my pens are archival. I do only use archival pens so that I know I won't lose the journaling that way. I take a photo of all my layouts before I move on, really, or within a day or two. So those photos get archived too. So pretty much I'm happy that everything is backed up. And so if there's a little bit that goes into the page, I do include things like ticket stubs. There was a layout in that early years album that I showed you earlier this week that has the patches off my Girl Scout uniform just on the page as embellishments. And not too worried about that. I think that the overall it's a win. That's what I feel. Okay, then there was another question. Where did it go? Okay, have I used Wonder Boy's writing in my layouts? I've put in a couple little things that he's made. I haven't scrapbooked his writing just yet, but he's just started to be making things that I think I might include. He does have a little scrapbook of all notable things that he's made, and by scrapbook I mean there's not a scrapbook like this, but like one of those just big kind of art portfolio books where you can just glue stuff in, and that started when he was tiny, like really little, like roll the car in the paint and then over the paper, and I just every so often I put a notable piece in there so that it's a nice little progress, but there's just like a little note next to each one, and that's it. There's no embellishment or anything. It's just his stuff stuck in a book. He's really obsessed with Newsies at the moment, and he likes to make little newspapers, and so I think I might scrapbook one of those. At the moment he keeps taking them to his teachers, but I think I'm gonna find one. I might have to ask the teacher to give it back to me so that I can put it in an album, because I think that's really sweet. Yeah, okay, then there was a question before that about the journaling, which I have not talked about yet on in this video, but I am going to. Let me do a little bit of the embellishment here, and then I'll talk about the journaling. Okay, so the things that I did want to use, these. And I want some darker contrasting pieces too, that I can use like confetti. I'm going to use those. I think that's all. Okay. I'm terrified. These are tiny and I don't want them to like disappear. That's plenty. Okay. Do I want to go that way? Do I want to go this way? I'm going to go that way because I like this direction, but I'm not going to take it all the way down here. I'm going to put my diagonal line here. Let's try out these. Now, this is way more licensed character stuff than I think I've ever put on a layout. So the page kitting has led me to that. I don't know what we think about that. I'm hoping that by putting it on something that I feel is a little more sophisticated, like the wood grain background paper, that it doesn't feel too cheesy and branded. Might well do though. You might be looking at it going, what have you done, Shimelle? Oh, I lost the adhesive for that honey pot. Come back. So, there. And here. So that, by using one of each style in these two groups, gives me 4 in each one, which makes me twitchy. So, oh no, I already did 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm just going to add another one here. I was so twitchy that I did it already without telling you on the first one. Okay, so I've got 5 there and 5 there. That's fine. Some sequins, following the same line, looking for places to add contrast. And those pearls on their own, I think they wouldn't necessarily need to be specifically Winnie the Pooh as a bear. You could have any other bear. So yes, I think, Mary, you will be fine if you don't have Winnie the Pooh scrapping to use them with a layout about cuddly toys in general. Allison found some Christmas stuff made as kits among her grandmother's things, and that's going in her Christmas journal this year. That's beautiful. I can't wait to see what happens. I think that would be lovely indeed. Almost done with these. And then I don't think I'm going to put pearls up here at the top, unless this looks odd and lonely, but I'm going to put a few of the stars up here at the top. I read something on a similar vein to Christmas journal things from my grandmother, that someone had, that one down here, had found her grandmother's wedding dress after her wedding. So she hadn't worn it as her wedding dress, but she loved it and she would have worn it. But it wasn't in a condition that it would have been able to been saved for another generation to make another wedding dress. And so she used it to make her album. She used some of the fabric in her wedding scrapbook, and that was her way of including the dress that she wished she had found before her wedding into her wedding. She felt like she could add it after the fact and it was still okay. I thought that was a beautiful little way to look at it. This is actually a pretty good match to this red. So I'm just going to add 3 of them. One here. Straighter though. One here. Maybe not up there. One over here. No, I'll just do 2. Okay, so the journaling is going to go here. I'm going to put some gold on, and then we're going to talk about journaling. Gold is going to follow that same diagonal line. It's going to be a lot looser by nature of how gold mist goes onto the page, but goodness, I like the gold against that wood grain. That's beautiful. Okay, so while this dries, let's talk about journaling. I'm just going to double check that I haven't missed any questions here. And yep, I'm all good there. I'm just going to check the form to see if there's anything that we need to cover there, and then I'm going to talk about journaling. Looks like I think we've got everything. Oh, the only questions posted there are on the photo editing, so that's fine. Okay. So journaling. I wanted to show you the kind of notebooks that I take everywhere. Okay, there's a quick comment there about color shine, that you don't like how it wipes off when it's dry. The only one I ever had trouble with was not color shine. It was actually the white Mr. Huey, calico white Mr. Huey, and that one I used it on almost every page in my backpacking album, and it sticks to the page protectors. But as long as I don't move the pages around to different page protectors, that's fine. So when I move them around, I go, oh, whoops. I don't really have the same problem with the gold. The white I definitely had trouble with, but my gold is okay. You do have to make sure that it is really shaken up, because sometimes I feel like that noise must be the most horrible thing for you to listen to, and so I skimp on how much I shake it up, and every time I do that I end up regretting it, because either it doesn't sink into the paper correctly or I get a big halo around the dots. The more you shake it, the better it works, for sure. Okay, notebooks. So I have one right here. This is a blank one, I think, ready to go. Yeah, so I have lots of them, and I keep blank ones. I keep all sorts of things. I have more in the cupboard. And Mary says the shaking noise is not too bad. That's good. And so I keep small notebooks like this all over the place. And I keep, some of them are hardbound like this. Some are about half this size and have a paper cover so that they're even smaller. I try to always have a notebook somewhere that I can get to it. There's one next to my bed. There are several in this room. There are notebooks like this in my backpack, in my handbag. I have them all over the place. There's one next to where I sit on the sofa. I just keep notebooks all the time. I also use the Notes app on my phone, and a similar, the Notes app basically on my laptop. And here's the thing. When I first was a very dedicated journaler, kind of pre-scrapbooking days, I was of the work process of sitting down and writing kind of a Dear Diary type style, where I would write an extended thing about my whole day, or it might be a specific story. or it might, they were normally quite long. They were not written as particularly well thought out or well composed entries. They were just verbal transfers from brain to paper, brain to paper. And it was, some people read themselves to sleep. I would write every night. And eventually, I found this was not as helpful as I wanted it to be. But I did it for years. And I started doing that when I was about 14. I am of the mind that 13 is the hardest year of your life. Personal tragedies at other ages aside, but just as a general rule, 13 is really, really difficult. 14 was when I started adopting coping strategies, and writing every day was one of them. But, if anybody had ever taken that notebook, there were no entries in there that could have been, even Diary of Anne Frank type stuff. Diary of Anne Frank was better composed, and she was in a panic all the time. Yeah. This was nothing that would have been interesting to read as somebody else's diary. History aside, obviously the history makes it interesting. But just her life, the way she was telling things was interesting. The way I was telling things was not interesting. Okay, so fast forward a few years. So I did that for a long time. Eventually, probably around the time that I had a full-time job that was becoming more than full-time, because when you start teaching in a school, if you are like me and you do not switch off at 3:30 when the bell goes every day, your brain refuses to shut off. And I didn't have the energy left to do that writing. But there was still part of me that needed to be writing, because that was my coping mechanism. That was what helped me keep everything in check. So if I was overworked and still not writing, this could be a problem. So here's what I started doing. Instead of keeping one notebook that had notes every day in a nice fluid style of, I'm going to, just transfer everything from head to paper, I'm just going to write a little bit. And I'm going to write about whatever was most interesting that day. And if I write one paragraph, it's going to be one paragraph that will be interesting to read, even if you don't get that big story that makes sense. At that point, I was still probably writing in 2 books, one at my bedside table and one in my desk at work. But it was just little highlights. And then I found, as I started transferring things from that type of into my scrapbook journaling, I found that the order didn't matter anymore, because I don't scrapbook chronologically. So I didn't need my notes to be chronological either, although I suppose it would make them easier to go find. But that's not what I did. I just started writing anything in any notebook on any page. There's no order to it. You know how you saw my scrap basket and you were like, that is crazy. Everything is a big mess. Yeah, my journaling is just like that. It's all over the shop. It's in one of those notebooks somewhere. And here's why it works for me. I just need to get the thoughts onto paper. And once I've written it down, I don't often go back and pull out the notebook to write it onto here. But there are times that I do. Let me tell you the times that I do. Sometimes words have been in my head, or a story has been in my head, and it takes a few days to get it out, or it might take a few weeks to get it out. In that case, if the story has gone round and round and round in my head before I wrote it down, I take that as a signal that the words that end up on the page are what I am supposed to document. And I will copy those straight to it. Or it might be something that I felt compelled to go back and reread and draft. And if that's the case, I will go back and put it in word for word. There is a page that always comes to mind when I talk about, I don't always go back and look, but sometimes I do. In my backpacking album, there is a place where I have 12 by 12 pages, and then in between, there's a front and back 8.5 by 11 that is typed text. And it was a blog post. I'd written it in my notebook first, and I'd written it on the road, and then I kind of let it sit, and then I went back and I drafted and made some changes, and then I published it as a blog post. And it was all about my impressions of communism. Not joking. So when we were backpacking, we spent time in Laos and Vietnam, that are both communist countries. And what I found interesting was the stuff that I was taught in school. And keep in mind, I went to school in Middle America at the end of the Cold War. So what I was taught about communism at school could be predictable. And not, there were certain things that were really drilled into our heads. And it's not that I ever thought that was real, that what they were saying was absolutely 100% true. It's that I couldn't imagine it accurately, and then I walked there and thought, oh, I see what's happening here. And it was just one of those moments that shook my head and shook my words. So I wrote longhand, drafted longhand, typed, let it sit for a day, drafted the typing, and then decided those words were so important to my brain that they need to go into the scrapbook as they are. So that was an example of when I went to what I had written, and it is in my album, word for word. This is not the case. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking forever and nobody is saying anything, so I'm really hoping that you're just listening and this is okay for me to talk about this and that I'm not losing you. Can you kind of just give me a thumbs up or something to say that I'm good and you're not all asleep now and I should carry on? Are we all right? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. I just needed to make sure that we're okay. I don't want you to be bored. Okay. So, things that I do write and then end up oh gosh, all of you. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. I'll carry on. Thank you. So now a lot of the stuff I just write down, and the things I might refer to get the wording right. So a lot of what I write down now are things that people say, and specifically things that he says, because that's one of the most interesting things about watching a human grow up, is the acquisition of language and how different people use words in different ways to express their personality. And that part, maybe that's because from my English teaching and theater background, that might add an extra cool bit to it. But I think even if you're not, from a linguistic background in any way, watching someone acquire language and use it is still really, really interesting. And that's the sort of stuff that I don't want to forget. And I think those are the sorts of things that I might forget if I wasn't scrapbooking it within a week or two. So I do write those things down. And those quotes are all over in all those different notebooks, all over the place, and in my phone, my computer, wherever. And I just, if I'm looking at something, and it's one of the reasons you don't always see me do the journaling in a live video. The other reason is because sometimes a lot of people leave when I start doing the journaling. I've watched the statistics, and sometimes people are watching. I start doing journaling and they all leave. So sometimes I save that so that I can go get my notebook and make sure that I got the right thing written down. Sometimes I will remember it exactly, and sometimes I want to double check. And I don't mind that I have to go to a million places. But often I write a little bit, and just that process of me writing it down the once, I don't need to go back and look at it again. Because it's like that's the seed of the story. And by the time I've worked on the page and everything, it's all coming together so that by the time I get to the point where I'm ready to write, it's pretty much there. Yeah. I know that, for example, on this, what I want to write about is not exactly what's in the photo, but something that's evident in the photo. So what he's doing here with Pooh is they're now sitting on this bridge made of all these small logs. Now, the ones that are, I think there is about 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so there were about 5 that were already there. And the rest of these logs were scattered around. And he saw that there were 5. And Christopher Robin took Winnie the Pooh over to sit on them. And Winnie the Pooh fell over and bumped his head. Yeah. So, Christopher Robin rescued Winnie the Pooh from this dry creek. They had a really hot summer, so there was no water. And rescued him from down there, put him at the side, ran all amongst the trees to find more, and brought more over. And I don't know if you can see that these are all kind of stacked up behind rather than flat. And that was so they could sit here and Pooh would not fall over and bump his head. So that's what's going into the journaling. Will he ever care about that story? I don't know. But it meant a lot to me, and this scrapbooking is for me. Yeah. So there we go. So that's what I'm going to write there. That's not something that I need to go back and look at the book for. But if I knew that there were certain words, which there are from this particular day, I know that I did write down certain things that he said other than my name is Christopher Robin. And I will use that on various pages where I will go refer to the book and get those things written down. Okay, so there were a few other questions that came up at the end of that. Right. Do you note in your pages what journaling is current and what is written retrospectively? Yes. And if the photos and the journaling have a big gap, this is not a big gap for me. But like say I decided today to scrapbook a photo from 10 years ago and write about it like that. Then when I finish the journaling where I would normally put one date as the date that the photos were taken, I will just write photos with a date, journaling, or words with another date. That's all. Don't overthink it. Super easy. Also, sometimes I don't do a whole new page, but I'll add journaling to something retrospectively, quite often in an envelope or a 6x12 page protector, and then I will indicate on the journaling or on the envelope when I wrote that, and then it would be next to a layout that was made differently, or made at a different time. So for example, I have an album from 2009 that I know has a layout that I did this, because it's the one that I always think of when I say, oh, sometimes you have to go back and add stuff. So in 2009, we took a trip to Hawaii where we visited my best friend from college, who you saw in the in that 1999 page style, where we went through that album of all the mixed things. We saw him in Hawaii in 2009, and he passed away in 2010. I went back and added an envelope with journaling to one of the layouts within that album. And I didn't journal it straight after because I needed to go through stages of grief. And I came back to it when I was at a point where I felt I could write about it, and I added that into that album. So the journaling that was done retrospectively goes with the photo in the chronological order. So the envelope was probably added in 2011, maybe the end of 2010, but probably 2011. But it's in the 2009 album. Does that help? More questions that came up there. On average, how many albums do you fill per year? I've done a Project Life album for 2018, but not sure if I prefer to do only 12 by 12. Unfortunately, the space might be the decider. Okay, a lot. So, let's do it this way. On average, I'm making 4 layouts a week. So that's 200 layouts a year, plus a Christmas journal. It is a lot of space in moving house and looking at where we're going to put everything. It is, I won't lie, there is a certain amount of, why does your hobby take up so much space? But at the moment, I want to hold on to it. Come on, comments. There we go. Katrina says she often does therapeutic journaling and she wants to start adding to some old pages. If you don't want it to be visible, you can always put it right in the page protector in between 2 pages. And If you do want it to be visible, then you can just add a page protector in the middle. You can use envelopes, just punch holes in the envelope or put it in a small page protector, anything like that. Yeah. Do I ever purge my layouts? I have a few times in my life. I don't feel the need to purge now, because I am now at a point where I create for myself first, and I'm not following rules. So, rules, that's such a silly concept. But for years I worked for magazines and for stores and things, and there were always a lot of guidelines as to what I needed to be doing. I went through at one point and I purged hundreds of layouts that I felt did nothing for telling my story. They did nothing for, they just did nothing for celebrating, documenting in the way I wanted it to. It was obvious to me, it might not have been obvious to anybody else, but it was obvious to me when I looked at the layouts that I had been told, you need to scrapbook about a garden. You need to scrapbook with purple striped paper. You need to scrapbook, upside down with your hands behind your back. And I purged all of that stuff. I also then made a choice. I made it very public. I got some backlash from publishers, and it's fine with me. I said I was no longer going to do anything. I was never going to scrap on assignment like that. If I was going to do a design team, it was going to be on the terms of I choose the topics of my layouts, and I choose that I handwrite or type my journaling, and I choose what products I use. And that's why I worked really well at Two Piece, because I had pretty much complete creative freedom there. They had a huge inventory, and I could use whatever I wanted as long as most things on my page were available at the store. I could write whatever I wanted. I could use whatever photos I wanted. It was brilliant. I could do single pages. I could do double pages as and when I wanted. I didn't need to meet any quotas. I just had to, I had the quota of your deadlines are these days. For Glitter Girl, I had, a video to do every week. But beyond that, there was never, you need to use purple striped paper. So, yeah, that worked really well for me. And then I just started working on my own, and so that has been fine too. It has worked well to stay true to myself, but I did purge all of that stuff. There's one other time that I purged a lot of layouts. I purged an X. Is that okay? There's a couple layouts just to make it obvious, so that the recovery story that's in the journaling makes sense, because otherwise if I took out 100% of all acknowledgement that he existed, then when it's like, I've been down and now I feel better, it would have made no sense and you would have wondered why I was so down. So there's a couple layouts in there, but there's not hundreds. Yeah. And here's what I did with that, by the way, because I wasn't sure how I would feel about it. So I purged them to a box. And I took all the layouts that I thought, I don't really want these in my album anymore, I don't think. And I purged them to a box, and I let them live in a box for a few years. And then I opened the box and I was like, no, don't want them, bye-bye. It was really easy then. But at the time when I was putting them in the box, I was like, is this the right thing to do, or is this kind of mean? I don't know. So I didn't burn them, I just put them in the bin. They're recycling. So there we go. The box made it easier. So if you ever are wondering, should I purge layouts, should I not purge layouts? There you go. All right, there is a discussion here with Mary about some family photos. So I'm going to go back and catch this all up. Mary says, I've done photos of family members who are no longer alive, and I have to guess what and where and when the photos were taken, but it makes for interesting journaling. Yes. And Allison said she made an 8x8 album about her grandmother after she died and found it really helped the grieving process, as well as finding out a lot of things I didn't know and wished I had asked her about. Yeah. Then Mary says, sorry, I'm reading these out loud because those of you who are live right now can see it in the comments, but those who watch on the replay won't be able to see that so well. So that's why I'm doing this. Mary says, that's exactly what I have trouble with, Allison, but it still helps to scrap and look at the photo and surmise exactly what the truth is. Allison said that she would sometimes get different versions from different people to complicate things, but I guess it's still good to document all perspectives. And then Mary says, trouble is, apart from my brother, who I don't see, just talked to on the phone, I'm the matriarch of the family now, and no one left to contradict what I put, which I think that is great. You can totally tell the story the way you want. I don't have an album of old family photos. I have the photos, digital photos. My granddad, when he knew he was going to die, he started collecting up all the old photos and trying to record what he could. And what he did, he wasn't sure how he could convert lots of like slide photos and 8mm things from those formats to something that we could use. So what he did was he set up his old 50s film projector and the slide machine and on a projector screen, and then put his digital camera on a tripod. And that's how he digitized everything. It actually worked really well. The prints are not that bad. And then he made a note in the file name of every single photo. It says as much as he knew about the name of the people, the location, the date, and sometimes how they were related in case it was too far back that we wouldn't know. And I thought putting it in the file name is both completely unwieldy and absolutely amazing, because it's going to, if I change it to something else, it's not going to be lost. Like if he had put it in tags and I put it into a piece of software that stripped the tags out, that would all be lost. But I don't think I'll lose the titles. They should the file name should stay intact. And so I have a whole bunch of stuff from there, and lots of things came up in that we didn't know about. We got all sorts of details, and my husband's grandmother, when she got quite old, started telling stories that she'd never told anybody. We happened to move to the neighborhood where she had lived when she was a tiny little girl, and she started talking about it, and everybody, kind of the generations in between, are like, why did we not know this? Why did you never talk about this? So I wrote down as much of it as I could, so that at least Wonder Boy would be able to pass it down or whatever. Okay. Any other questions that I can help with? And the stuff that when you're scrapbooking pictures from people that came before you and you don't really know, I really don't think there's any harm in saying that in the journaling. And it might be that if your albums do get picked up, and I know a lot of us are not too worried about if once we're gone, if somebody takes our albums or not, that's okay. But some people will know that their albums that will get carried on. And the thing is that one generation might not be interested in chasing the family tree, and then another generation might. So as long as you've put down what you know, I think that someday somebody might be really helpful for it. I did a little bit of family tree tracking on the side of my family that I don't know, and found something really interesting and thought, oh, I had no idea. And I'm pretty sure that the two generations of that side of the family that I knew when I was a tiny little girl, I'm pretty sure they didn't know. But I just worked it out by, going on Ancestry in the free 30-day trial or whatever it was, and found something that was historically significant and made a whole lot of other things make sense. So I only needed a tiny little bit of information, but it was some random, distant ancestor relative that had put it on Ancestry.com, and it helped it all make sense. So I think even if you only know a little piece of the puzzle, it might be the piece that somebody needs someday. Mine was it was something from a church cookbook, so that I could track what church they were a member of, and that showed me where they had lived and when. Okay, Sophia says, how do I store the family stories? Do I include them in my layouts or elsewhere? At the moment, they're all digital. There's only, in that album that I showed you the other day, has the only pages that I've done with photos that are before me. There's one of my grandparents with their first baby. That's my mom, and their first car. Which I just think is, that is totally the thing in 1956 that you would have used your camera with real film for, right? Somebody please take a picture of us coming home from, I think it was from our baptism, with the baby in the fancy dress and the car behind them. The house isn't in the picture, just the car. And then there was one with photos of my mom and her sister growing up, because my gran sewed all their clothes and she quite often made matching dresses for the two of them. I'm pretty sure that they probably hated that, but I love it, so I made a layout about that. And the rest, I wrote down all the details that Grandpa gave me, and I have it in a computer file that I have backed up in several places. Okay, anything else? Okay, so Sophia asked this because she has loads of family stories and would like to include them in her album, but think there would be more story than layouts if you did that. There's nothing wrong with having more story than layouts. And if you do think that you have more story than layouts, I would look into that idea of using 6x12 or 8.5 by 11 page protectors in between the 12x12s, because then you've got a space for lots of text, and you can separate it from the visuals so that if you have more words and you have photos, it all works out well. You could still do a story on a 12x12, but I don't have a 12x12 printer. If you want to print out longer stories, then the smaller page size will help you do that. Anything else before we go? Thank you so much for embracing this entire class idea. It's different. So there'll be two things left to come that will both be recorded videos. There'll be the Lightroom video and the Harry Potter page kit. I'm going to put a Harry Potter page kit video up on the forum. But the Harry Potter page kit will definitely be early next week. Lightroom I'm going to try to get online for you tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, because I'm live on tomorrow morning on Facebook. Jen says, any idea what the next class will be other than Junior Christmas? Well, it will not be a behind the scenes class. It will be an edited class with more, back to my more polished video style and more polished classroom delivery, because I do like to really have a schedule of what I'm going to deliver, and this morning was way out of my comfort zone to be like, oh, I was supposed to be talking about editing and now I'm going to scrapbook on the fly. So anyway, I have dropped a few hints about what the upcoming class will be, but I'm not sure if anybody's worked it out yet, so I'm going to leave that as it is for now. Okay. Thank you for all your support. It has been very kind of you. And those of you, if this is your first experience here and you're thinking, goodness, this is a bit random, please do not worry. Try something else that is a little bit more polished. Most of my classes do have that same style that I use on Glitter Girl videos on YouTube, but you're getting something that's kind of more developed over a bigger topic with lots of videos rather than just one video to answer the question. And hopefully you'll enjoy it. Please, though, feel free to ask any questions if you're wondering, what is a normal class like. And I'll be live tomorrow on Facebook at 9:30 in the morning. If you don't see, if that time doesn't work for you in your time zone, you can always watch it on the replay. I'm live on Mondays and Fridays. Okay. Thank you so much. I think that's pretty much everything answered. Lovely. Thank you. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye. It doesn't want me to stop being live. It won't click. Come on.